Nina, thank you for joining us. What do we know about this latest case of police brutality against a black teenager, which appears to amount to plain murder by a white police officer?
Well, bearing in mind that we knew very little about this case until just 24 hours ago when this dashcam footage was released. Laquan McDonald, a 17-year-old black teenager, a resident reported him trying to break into trucks and also steal radios. And somebody called the police. It seems that somebody wanted the police to arrive with a stun gun. Whether or not that actually happened, we don't know. But police officers did arrive on the scene. More officers arrived and began to track him. He was carrying a knife, a 3-inch folding knife, and the white police officer, who has now been charged with murder, Jason Van Dyke, opened fire, fired 16 shots, some of those into his back and his backside, continued firing even after he fell to the ground. There was no attempt to help him or rescue him. And we only know all of this because of the release of this footage, and that perhaps is the most shocking part of this all, that it was only when this footage was released that this officer was charged with murder.
Now, what has been the public reaction to the release of this shocking video?
Well, there were protests last night in Chicago. There were few arrests, but people were chanting 16 shots, referring to the number of shots that brought the victim down. Rahm Emanuel, the mayor of Chicago, called for protesters to remain calm. He said people did have the right to protest, but that protests should be peaceful. The family of the victim said that protests should not be violent, and they said that his legacy should be better than that. But there is widespread public anger and shock over this incident, which is the latest in a string of episodes dating back to a series of protests in Ferguson last August, following the killing of an African-American, Michael Brown. And since then, a national debate over the state of race relations in this country has been ignited, but also throwing the spotlight very much on police misconduct and the targeting and disproportionate brutality towards African Americans.
Yes, you picked on the right, on this police brutality against African Americans in the US. There have been a string of events, as you've said, but this latest incident, I mean, the very shocking nature of this particular video has actually got Americans more incited, hasn't it?
That's right. I mean, I think the bad side to this story is that there's a building consensus or perception that big city police forces in this country tend to be trigger happy and do kill a lot of people. And very often they are very white police officers compared to the neighborhoods that they're policing. The good side of the story is that there's been a real push for transparency, that there was a campaign for transparency that led to the release of this video footage. The really pessimistic might say that America is and remains a very violent, brutal country, a very racist country. I think if you're an optimist, you might say that the system does appear to be cleaning itself up because of this push for transparency over police misconduct. Chicago, too, itself has a reputation of police brutality against African Americans, but also against whites. But I think the overwhelming takeaway is that it took a long time for this footage to come out and a long time for this officer to be charged. And you can imagine if this footage had not been made public, well, how many incidents have been going on out there that we don't know about?
Absolutely right. Now, police brutality in the United States has led to the formation of movements such as the Black Lives Matter movement. Are these advocacy groups highly active in the US?
I would say that they're gaining momentum, but I think that the election campaign has perhaps made some of these race issues even more controversial and even more divisive. There was an episode recently where Donald Trump, who, as you know, is a Republican front-runner, presidential hopeful, was delivering a stump speech, and a protester from Black Lives Matter did appear at that rally, and Donald Trump very aggressively shut him down and had him thrown out, and he was kicked to the ground by Trump supporters. And episodes like that, I think it's very difficult to understand outside America how events like that can transpire, given the fact that America overcame its civil liberties debates in the 1960s, and yet decades on we're still having the same debate.
And I'm glad you brought the election, fever that's engulfing the U.S. With the U.S. heading to the polls soon, apart from Trump, have any of the other presidential candidates voiced their opinions on this incident and in police brutality in general?
The Republicans are relatively quiet on this particular topic. President Obama has on multiple times come out and condemned police brutality, and there are federal investigations, a number of federal investigations relating to individual incidents ever since Ferguson still underway, and an investigation is underway involving the Chicago murder as well. I think there is a national debate over the treatment of African Americans, but Chicago is an interesting case because it's a Democratic-run city. Rahm Emanuel was President Obama's former chief of staff, and yet we saw the police authorities still target an African American teenager.
Well, thank you very much indeed for bringing us up to speed. That was our correspondent Nina Maria Potts, live from Washington.